I'm at a small, tiny gas station in Brooklyn, New York. And as I was approaching the city, I could feel that the big, giant cup of coffee that I drank and a bottle of water was going through my system. So I needed to find a bathroom, but there weren't any restrooms as I was approaching. So I thought, well, it's not that bad. I can focus. And then as I was driving in Brooklyn, the road turned and I had the most amazing view of the Manhattan skyline. So I quickly switched to my camera function on my iPhone that was in the window, away from Google Maps and onto the camera. Got a 10-second video shot of me driving with this skyline in the window. And then back to Google Maps and saw that my turn was now. So I missed my turn and got into a tunnel. I don't know if it's the Brooklyn Tunnel, but anyway, I got to see Manhattan for the first time, and it's a long tunnel. If you've ever driven that way, you know it's a pretty long tunnel. And once I got to the other side, I was hoping to find a gas station or a McDonald's or anything where I can relieve myself, but no such luck. So I managed to turn the car and get back in the tunnel, and at that point I was really wiggling in my seat. So once I got back to the Brooklyn side, I took the first exit. It wasn't the way I was going, but I took the first exit and was just hoping, dying to find anywhere that I could find a restroom. And thank God there was this tiny gas station right on the other side. I rushed inside and looked really appealing at the guy and said, "Do you have a bathroom?" And he looked at me and could see that I was under a lot of pressure, so to speak. And he said, "Yeah, you can use the one in the back." And that was like, I'm reborn now. Thank God I found it. I was starting to look at the empty coffee cup in the cup holder and thinking, can I do that while I'm driving? Not to be too graphic, but I was literally thinking about it because I was under a lot of pressure. Well, my plan right now is to go to the Airbnb here in Brooklyn, dump the suitcase and then the bag, and then head into Manhattan where I have to return the car. But first I need to find the Airbnb. I am in New York, and this is the Radio Vagabond podcast.
Meet Palle Bo, a digital nomad from Denmark on an epic journey around the world.
My name is Palle Bo, and I'm a longtime radio producer. In 2013, I started planning to become a digital nomad and a full-time traveler. 3 years later, I had sold my house, my car, and all my furniture. And in July 2016, I set out on a quest to visit every country in the world. In this podcast, I'm taking you along on my journey, and I'm sharing my ups and downs and let you listen in to conversations with some interesting people I meet along the way.
This is the Radio Vagabond podcast.
We've reached a milestone. Welcome to episode 100 of the Radio Vagabond podcast. There's going to be snacks, champagne, and fireworks after the show. As you can hear, I've reached New York City. And after having dumped my bags in Brooklyn, I'm back in the rental car, driving into Manhattan for the second time that day. But this time on purpose.
Also, the Van Wyck northbound at 20th Avenue earlier broken down vehicle has been cleared. Still some residual backup. This report is brought to you by Sprint.
Well, now I'm in Manhattan. And I have, according to Google Maps, there's a 15 minutes drive from here. I think it's going to take a little bit longer, but it's 2 o'clock right now, and I just have to give the car back before 5 o'clock. I'm glad that I chose not to have a car here in New York because it is so much faster with the subway, and And even though I'm staying in Brooklyn, the subway can take me all the way out there, or some kind of train. It's part of the subway system, so that's the good thing about New York. So here I am, stuck in traffic on 37th Street in Manhattan.
That's coming up right around 2:40 on Z100.
It's a lot easier than I thought. Actually, I just crossed Fifth Avenue. I'm at the intersection on 49th and 7th Avenue. It's only around 1,000 feet or 800 feet left for the car rental company. So it's pretty cool, and it's pretty cool driving around here in downtown Manhattan with skyscrapers around me and C100 on the radio. It doesn't get much better than this.
All the hits and the occasional autocorrect at Z100 New Cork, York.
This episode is brought to you in part by Hotels25.com. Whenever you need a hotel anywhere in the world, go to Hotels25.com. That would get you the best price. Hotels25.com searches a bunch of the biggest hotel sites in one simple search. Hotels25.com, it's best price guaranteed.
It's Saturday morning in New York. Well, it's nearly noon. It's 20 minutes to 12 at the moment. After doing a bit of work, I took the subway into Manhattan, and I chose to go to Lower Manhattan, to the area where the World Trade Center, the Twin Towers, were before 9/11 2001. Now there's a memorial, and I think it's a beautiful way that they solved it, and not building any new skyscrapers on top of the ground where the two Twin Towers were. So now there's a memorial. It's sort of a park with two giant square waterfalls into a hole where the two Twin Towers were. And around the edge you can see the names of all the people who died in this terrible attack. Beside that, they built a new tower, and now it's the highest building in New York, and you can go up there and see an amazing view of the city. When I announced that I was going to the Big Apple, a friend of mine told me that I should meet Raphael Taurus. So we went walking his dogs in Central Park. Raphael, thank you for meeting me here, and we're taking your dog for a walk.
Yes, we're taking both my dogs.
It's Al Capone and
Arepa.
And we're on Lexington and 84th, and heading towards Central Park for a walk. Have you lived here long?
I grew up here. I was born in Colombia, and I've been in New York since I was 7. Been in the States since I was 3. So, and I'm 38. So I've been here. I would consider myself a New Yorker by this point.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I've been told that you do a very special kind of treatment, and it's like acupuncture, but then again, not really.
Kind of. Well, what I do is something called posturology and auricular therapy. So what auricular therapy is basically there's a map to the body and the ear. And what I do is I stimulate these points of the ear, the skin of the ear, with, you can do it either with an electrostimulus device, you can use an infrared light, you can use an LED light, you could use pressure, and some people use...
How can light have an effect?
A light? Well, because of the photosynthesis of the skin, so you'll have an effect on the skin of the ear. Yeah, it's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
So I've been doing that for a few years now, and I do that with something called posturology. And posturology, basically what that is basically the study of posture. So it works really well with the people who have chronic pain. Let's say if you come to me like, hey, you know what, you've been traveling the world, right? I mean, from what I've been told,
yeah.
let's say you come to me, hey, I've been traveling, and for the last 6 months my back has been hurting. So Usually, not always, but the majority of the time when somebody has a chronic issue, it's usually because there's a misalignment in your posture. So what I do is I figure out why you're getting that misalignment, and once I figure out why you're getting that misalignment, I'll stimulate these points of your ear, and all of a sudden, boom, everything starts becoming more aligned, the pain decreases, range of motion increases. So that's how it works.
And you also have a fitness center, or?
Yes. So the way I started off in this industry, I started off very young. I was, maybe 17, 18 years old when I started doing this line of work. So I started off as a personal trainer, and I was working with a lot of, people that wanted to get in shape, and I always loved working out and had a lot of fun with it.
I never did.
Oh my God.
I love eating and drinking.
Don't we all? But everything with moderation, at least that's what I like to tell myself. But so I started off with that person. Actually, you know what? In matter of fact, we're a block away from the first gym I ever worked at. So my buddy was working the front desk at this really fancy gym at the time. And he was on his way to law school, and he said to me, he was like, hey, listen, do you want a summer job? I was like 17, 18 years old. He was like, you get to work out for free, you get to hang out. He was like, you do the front desk there. I was like, yeah, sure, why not? So I started off as a front desk guy for like maybe 6 months, and I befriended some of the trainers. And I was just like, hey, you know what? This is really cool. I really like the body, studying anatomy, biomechanics, all that stuff was really
Yeah, then
cool.
you got interested in does this muscle go and what does that do?
Correct.
And
I became very intrigued by it. So, I started taking classes for it. And before you know it, I started working with clients. And then fast forward a few years after that, I've always been very active my whole life. So I was playing soccer one day and I hurt my knee. And when I hurt my knee, I was going to physical therapy for, maybe 6 months or so. And I couldn't bend my knee more than 90 degrees. It was really bad. Nothing was torn, but I was diagnosed with something called, basically my patella was dislocated. And it had popped back in, but I just couldn't bend my knee. So of course, for somebody that's been active their whole life, I started getting depressed and I started getting sad that I couldn't go play soccer. And all I would do instead of playing soccer, I would play soccer online on my Xbox. So, it was really sad. So one of my buddies at the time was learning some type of manual technique that involved like muscle testing and making sure that the muscles are working. And if they're not working, he would touch specific points of the leg to make them work better. And he was just like, hey, listen, I need a body to practice on. Yeah. So I was like, hey, you know what? What do I have to lose? It's not going to get any worse. So he literally practiced on me for maybe 15 minutes, maybe 3 times within 2 weeks. And about 2.5 weeks later, I started playing soccer again. Mm. And after that experience, I was just like, wow. I was like, I got to go learn what this guy's learning. Yeah. So I went out to D.C. to learn that. Then I went to Arizona to learn a whole bunch of other stuff. And then Oklahoma, and then I came across posturology and auricular therapy. So I came across them, and basically this is a European technique. It's a French technique. It's really big in France. It's pretty big in Denmark. Oh. Okay, it's pretty big in Denmark, and in Germany, and in Algeria, it's really big, and it's getting big in South America.
So this
as well.
is not something from Asia, Far East?
No. This is a European technique. It's specifically a French technique, which is very different than acupuncture. Acupuncture is more based on, energy and let's say like meridians. This is more based on neurology. So when I stimulate a specific point of your ear, we should get a neurological response. For example, let's say your shoulder hurts, and I stimulate the point of your ear that correlates to your shoulder. You should feel a relief in pain, and you should see more than likely an increase in range of motion as well. So that's how that works.
Raphael has actually been to my home country of Denmark. And this is how he saw the Danes.
And then one of my favorite things about Denmark was the drinking, because everybody's like, skål, skål. Danish people are a lot of fun.
Yeah.
A lot of fun. Good people, very friendly. It was.
But then again, not so outgoing as many other places.
Different.
Yeah.
Like I was surprised. Like they, it's not a. Like I like to go dancing and stuff. Danish people don't like to dance. At least the ones that I met.
Some of us do, but some of us can't.
Just can't. That's what they told me. They're like, oh no, we just have no rhythm.
Here's a quick tip for your trip to New York. When you're in Manhattan, take the Staten Island ferry from the southern tip of Manhattan to Staten Island, and then just take the boat back again. It's a free service, absolutely free service, and it's a good way to get closer to the Statue of Liberty. We're not getting super close, but at least we're getting closer than if we were in Manhattan. So it's a good way to see it, and it's a nice boat ride. Once you get on the ship in Manhattan, make sure that you go on the left side of the boat and be quick about it, because that's where all the good seats are, or standing places along the railing of the boat, and that's the side where you get a good view of the Statue of Liberty and also of the Manhattan skyline. And going back, of course, it's the other side, the left side of the boat. I continue my walk with Raphael and his 2 dogs, and by now we're into the wonderful Central Park. We see people hanging out, relaxing, playing ball, or with small model boats in a pond, and then there are squirrels running around everywhere. New York is great on a sunny Sunday, but Raphael feels that it's not as great as it used to be.
New York is not the New York that I grew up in. I mean, you would expect it to change, but I feel like New York has lost some of its grit.
It's lost some.
Yeah, it lost some of its grit. I mean, maybe it's because I was younger back then, but for some reason, like that grittiness to New York, that feeling of like that thrill. For example, you used to, let's say you wanted to live in the Village, or if you wanted to live in Soho, you could afford to live down there. Like, you could afford, you have these artists that would rent out these nice studios, and you would have like very creative people here. Now forget it. Now New York is like, unless you're making a lot of money, and mostly it's coming from Wall Street, you can afford to live in these places. And New York, like I remember New York City, we had tokens for the subway. Now we have subway cards, Metro cards. So, and the turnstiles were made out of wood. Now they're obviously made out of metal, but you would go into the subway and you would see graffiti everywhere. And for me, that is like the New York that I can really appreciate. Like, that was like grit. That was just like, wow, you're in the New York City subway. Now it's a little too modern for me. Like, it's missing the grit aspect of it, And another example is like 42nd Street, Times Square. Like, I remember as a kid, when I was like maybe 5, 6 years old, we would drive up from Florida to New York, and I remember every time we would go through the Lincoln Tunnel. And as soon as we would get out of the Lincoln Tunnel, there used to be these guys called the squeegee guys, okay? So the squeegee guys would be these guys that would literally hang out right outside the Lincoln Tunnel with this like dirty water, okay, and like a bottle, and with like a rag or like a little squeegee, and they would come up to your car and like, oh, should we wash your windows? And even if you would say no, they would still go, and they would like, they'll put like this dirty black water on your glass, and then they would clean it.
And your dad would go, no.
Yeah, everybody would be like, no. And my mom would be like, close the windows, like lock the doors, stay away from the doors, make sure the windows are all closed. But that to me was like New York great, you know? Like
that's the time you felt okay. Now we're here.
yeah, that's what. Yeah, when I would drive into when my family would.
Your
drive
dog
into,
saw a
yes,
squirrel.
sorry. Yeah, squirrel. Jack Russell's. Yeah. So enough, Capone. Enough. So when we would drive in, you knew you were in New York.
Yeah.
You knew it. So that's what I miss about New York.
And I can take anything you can throw at me, and nothing can get me down. Life is looking so bright, the sun is up again. I'm feeling like I could fly. No clouds in my way, no. And I'm living the good life. And I'm living the good life now. I'm living the good life, and nothing can get me down, no.
That was almost it for this episode, but there's more coming your way here from New York. And in a minute, I'll tell you what else is coming here from the Big Apple. But first, I want to remind you that this episode is brought to you in part by Hotels25.com. Yeah, you know, it's a website that helps you find the best prices on hotels around the world. It searches a bunch of the big hotel search sites in one simple search. Make sure you try it next time you're looking for a hotel. Next week, you'll get a special episode that I chose to call Humans of New York, the podcast. Well, actually, it's going to be a two-parter, but you'll get both episodes next week. Here, I asked the same 5 questions to 6 very different New Yorkers. What's the best part about living in New York? What's the worst part about living here? If you became supreme ruler of New York City, what would be your first executive order? What's your lifelong dream? And if you could travel anywhere you wanted to, where would you go? We get a lot of different answers. And then I'll tell you where I'm going after New York. It's going to be another continent and very different from North America. My name is Palabo. See ya.